All right, so the first slide just shows some of the things that ad analytics and SEO tools, how they can be useful for OSINT. So first, as I mentioned, is they can be helpful for operational security. It's nice to know what kind of tracking is on the website. I noticed that the presentation prior to mine, they mentioned some of that tracking and that it's helpful to know, and that you can make a good risk mitigation measure for your searches based on those findings. The second is that both ad analytics and SEO tools are helpful for a wide array of investigations. It can run the gamut from fraud investigations to countering disinformation, to domain intelligence, and to competitive business intelligence. It's also helpful for looking at market preference and targeted audience insights, and the other ones listed on this slide. And I will be actually discussing some examples for all of these. This is just a small sample of some of the tools that have free options. And there's so many SEO tools out there that you can use. I can't address all of them in this presentation. And in fact, I'm just going to be addressing the ones of the from the Markup, Blacklight down to WooRank. The other ones on the right are just ones that I've played with and that I found to have some useful information. And you are able to use those and practice those at your leisure after the presentation. The one thing that I would like to point out is with, I'm sorry, you're talking. So the one thing that I would like to point out with all of these resources is that whenever you have a OSINT collection plan, obviously you want to look at what resource you're using and where it's coming from, because that resource in and of itself can be collecting your queries and your data. So if you're doing research, for example, on a particular country, you might not want to use a company from that country if that SEO tool has any kind of relationship with that government. You might want to choose a different SEO tool instead. So it's helpful to look at which tool you're using to see if it fits not just your plan as far as what kind of data, but also your security plan. So the first one I want to talk about is Markup, the Blacklight. This is a free tool. It is actually not a marketing tool, and it was first intended to show people how intrusive ad tracking can be. And what I found is that, yes, it's very helpful for operational security. It shows me where the ad tracking can be coming from, but I can also use it for other types of OSINT uses. One of which is it has a whole section for showing who might be monitoring your keystrokes and who's doing canvas fingerprinting. And this can be particularly useful or helpful if you're looking at foreign domains. And again, if that foreign domain or that foreign company that is doing the canvas fingerprinting, what are their relationship to other companies in that country or to that government, or what could they be doing with what could they be doing with that data themselves? This slide gives an example with monitoring of keystrokes and mouse clicks from Yandex. And of course, Yandex is Russia-based. And most Russia-based tools, such as Yandex, do have an agreement, a sharing agreement, dealing with national security with the Russian government. The next one that I would like to address is another tool called FouAnalytics PageXRay. This is one of my favorite tools for ad analytics. And the reason I say that is it is a all-purpose tool for many things. The person who made this tool originally made it to look at ad fraud, but from looking at it and utilizing it, you can use it for a variety of things, including like identifying disinformation or who's disseminating disinformation, who's running an influence operation, who might be affiliated to a domain, what countries might be involved with the domain. There's so many things that you can get from this resource, and I'll actually be showing you an example at the end of this section dealing with a propaganda website that disseminates disinformation. But on this slide, this is the first thing that you would get when you run a FouAnalytics PageXRay query. And in this instance, what it shows is that Yandex provides at least three different kinds of fingerprinting. And then it also shows where it's tracking. Now, it's important to note, although I don't have an example on this slide, that the entry point where you have the first yandex.com 810ms, that it has three tracking entities in between the next set of tracking entities. And the reason this is important to note is if you're looking at, for example, a banking website, and when you go into the banking website and you do authentication, if there's trackers in between logging in and then getting on the actual platform, then that means that those trackers are collecting data in between your authentication and your endpoint. And for some banking websites, this can be absolutely fascinating because it could show where there is some very disturbing vulnerabilities. This is another part of Dr. Fou's resource that I like, and his PageXRay provides a screenshot of the web page. So not only does it show you how much tracking that a website has, it then shows you what the screenshot looks like of the domain. Now, this can be helpful for a couple of reasons, the most obvious of which is it acts as an initial archive view, like the Wayback Machine would, was showing you this is what's on that URL. And then you can decide if it's something that you want to investigate further or how you want to open the URL if you want to open it. The other reason that this page preview is helpful is a lot of times it will show where there's pop-up ads. Now, the next thing that FouAnalytics will show you on PageXRay is both the internal and external links of a domain, of the URL that you put into the actual tool. And this is also helpful for research because on external links, it shows what links that domain or that URL mentions. And then sometimes paywalls are on there or payment platforms. So let's say you suspect that a website might be using a PayPal for fundraising, but you can't see it like on the initial pages that you've looked at. Well, a lot of times in PageXRay, the PayPal URL will show up as an external link, as will a lot of the other payment platforms. So if you're doing a financial investigation, it actually can be helpful for that as well. And then it can also show other TLDs that a domain pops off of. So in the case of Yandex, Yandex, it's primarily based out of Russia, but if you look external links, it also shows that it's coming out of Belarus and some other locations. And it can show affiliated domains to the domain or domains that are recommended or referred. On internal links, the internal links section is very helpful because that, of course, when you get those nice negative URLs that you can combine with Google Dorks, this is a great place to look for them. And then you can copy that internal link and then put it with the Google Dork terminology that you're going after to obtain the information that you desire. Oh, sorry. Previous. Okay, so this is another part of PageXRay, and that is it provides an option for an HTTP archive download of the domain and a download of the JSON files, and it'll download a screenshot for you. And of course, all of these things are incredibly helpful because, as you know, or as many of you know, the HTML code and JSON a lot of times has very valuable metadata and information in it that you can utilize for OSINT investigations or to pivot to other platforms for additional data. You could find a date in there, or you could find another URL in there, or in this instance, looking at Yandex, one of the things with the code on here that kind of highlighted to me was that Kaspersky antivirus software is mentioned in the HTML code, and that particular software company recently has been under scrutiny for ties to Russia, and this is just, you know, it's showing that Yandex likes that code. And of course that could be serendipitous, but at the same time I find it to be interesting. Then top advertisers are shown, and this is helpful because not only will it show you like what types of products or what types of companies are using that domain for their marketing, sometimes it can actually show birds of a feather flock together. And so I've actually been on political affiliated websites where the top advertisers that are pulled and depicted on PageXRay show ideological groups or fundraising efforts that link to the domain that you're looking at. And that I think is helpful for when you're doing investigations on a specific topic. And then ad counts, of course, shows the scope of advertising of the entity that's doing the advertisements. Oh. Okay. Now the next slide is the case example I wanted to show, and that is a website that I ran through FouAnalytics PageXRay called Operation Disclosure. And Operation Disclosure is a propaganda website that puts out right-wing extremist narratives and themes. And when I ran it through the PageXRay, I got a lot of very valuable information if I was researching the entity behind that domain. So first of all is I found out what countries were doing ad tracking through that domain, what type of canvas fingerprinting was being done through that domain, how it was doing its fundraising, what advertisers or companies were linking to that domain, and a lot of other stuff that was of use. But one of the things that really stood out to me was every single entity that's a tracker, you can take that entity and you can pivot it and you can look that tracker up by itself. So one of the trackers actually ran up on a different tool as possibly being malware. And so I ran the tracker through a brief malware analysis, and it said, well, it's kind of suspicious. So that can also be helpful for when you're looking at threat actors that might be affiliated to a domain. Okay. Now we're going to move to SEO tools, because I've covered the two ad analytic tools. There are other ad analytic tools, but there's not as many of them that there are SEO tools. And even though it wasn't intended as an ad analytic tool, URL scan info or urlscan.io also provides some ad analytic data that can be complementary to the data that you would pull off of PageXRay. Now we're on to the first SEO tool, which is AHREFs, and they have a lot of options that are freemium and premium. I've only used their free options. One of the things that I like about their services is their backlink checker, and their backlink checker can be used for companies, which is what it's intended for. It can be used for foreign government URLs, as can some other backlink checkers, not just theirs. And you can also use it for some social media platforms that you could theoretically also Google dork a lot of times, not all the time, but many times it seems that the social media platforms that you can Google dork are the same ones that are helpful to query through a backlink checker. So in this one, I ran it through, I'm not going to use any government examples for any foreign governments, but I did use this on Telegram, and I also used it with MeWe. And for both of those, I was able to get some interesting results. In this example, I'm using Telegram. So with the backlink checker in Telegram, the first thing is it gives me an idea of how many backlinks are on that social media platform, if the social media platform is accessible via a backlink checker. Then it will provide a number of how many referring domains are accessible theoretically through a backlink checker, and it will give you domain rating and some other data. But where I really find it to be helpful and useful for researching different concepts or topics or users or channels or groups is the listing that they have, where they actually give you the top backlinks, because they give you the URL of the backlink, then they give you the number of referring domains, they give you kind of a traffic estimate, and then they give you the anchor. And the anchor is the URL on Telegram. So that anchor could be a channel, or it could be a channel and a user. Okay. So I did that for the platform, and obviously you can't pull everything on Telegram. Telegram's massive, and this tool is not going to give you all of the backlinks for free. So you only get like the top 100, but you can combine that with other backlink checkers, which theoretically would be time intensive, but you could, and then you could compile data, or you could get somebody to make their own backlink checker and then run it on a platform like Telegram. And it probably, it's not going to be a short amount of time, because that's a lot of data, but somebody could do that. So when I did that with the entire domain, I got an overview of the domain of t.me for Telegram, but I found it to be of even more use when I ran it on a specific channel, because you can actually take a specific channel on Telegram and run it through a backlink checker. And then on that backlink checker, you will get data just on that channel. So in this specific example, I looked at one sub channel on Telegram, and it gave me specific, actually, it gave it, I'm skipping the next slide. It gave me these URLs here, and these URLs all deal with QAnon. So I did a channel on Telegram that was QAnon, and what it did is it gave me the top backlinks for QAnon on Telegram for that specific channel, affiliated URLs, and some users. And then of course, it's not a lot of users or all users, but it's some users. And then you go to the main backlinks that are connected to that backlink, then you can pull down some other users just from looking at the profile of the Telegram channel itself when you pivot to it. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why, or that's just some of the reasons for why I like that tool. But there's other reasons as well. That one is Singapore based, so that company is based out of Singapore. SEMrush is actually originally created in Russia, but now it's based out of Pennsylvania, and it's based out of Bucks County. And they listed that they have about 10 employees. So SEMrush is another it's like in the top 5 popular SEO tools. And SEMrush also provides a lot of data that would be helpful for OSINT investigations. So the first thing is it gives you an overview of whatever domain or URL you're looking at that it will query. And it will show you what countries or distribution by country for that domain. So the example that I used was I always check all OSINT tools and OSINT companies before I look at their data. And whenever I check them, I run them through all these tools to see, what kind of tracking they're doing, where is the tracking coming from, where are they marketing, so on and so forth. So I went ahead and used the example of Social Links for this. And Social Links is a OSINT company that was founded in Russia and that now has an office in the Netherlands, and that is currently moving its staff to the EU because of the current crisis with Ukraine. All right. So on Social Links, it should distribution for country. This will probably change given everything I just said. They have US listed first, Russia listed second, India listed third as far as their traffic share, or how heavy their traffic is. And then it shows they provide some graphs with timelines, which is good when you're trying to look at the history of a domain, or where traffic is coming to, or when traffic was there, and so on and so forth. And then it also provides top organic keywords and position changes. Now, both of these concepts are helpful, one, for related concepts to pivot to, and two, to find concepts that might be affiliated to the entity that you're looking at. So in this instance, when I'm looking at the top organic keywords, OSINT, it's an OSINT company, Maltego, they provide a set of transforms for Maltego as a platform for law enforcement. Then Social Links, which is the platform itself. Investigate MTG, these are terms related to their prior domain. Gamma, which I haven't looked at yet, but I believe that's one of their products. And then some other affiliated concepts to that company. So that's helpful to know when you're trying to profile or look at what does a company have, or what is it offering. On the right side, the same thing is it shows related concepts to that domain, or what kinds of services maybe that company might be engaged with. So. And it also puts organic competitors and a competitive positioning map, which is helpful because that again shows what it might be affiliated to, or what it may be competing against, and sometimes both. Now, SEMrush also provides backlinks, and so you can also use SEMrush to look up backlinks. And in this instance, I found this with this example specifically, is it helps me find other locations of other OSINT actors, other OSINT companies, and other OSINT concepts. And so on the second one in here mentions Boolean strings, which is one of the people that presented last year at SANS. Yeah. And then again, affiliated concepts and referring domains. Now on referring domains, that's very helpful too, because it tells you which domains have referred or suggested the domain that you're looking at. And that, of course, can lead to additional pivots or points of investigation or query. And again, this is showing still with SEMrush time event. So, you know, it's not a proper military time event chart, but some of this data is helpful for that kind of analysis. If you were making a time event chart, you know, you could use this kind of data to help with this type of analysis. And the prior data that I was just showing you, some of that would be helpful if you were making an association matrix. And this shows on SEMrush what categories of subject relate to the domain that you're looking at, which is also helpful because it gives you an idea of the culture or the nature of the entity that you are observing. And then also, of course, with anchor words, it can give you some additional leads. In this case, though, most of the top anchors were pretty the same with the concept I was looking at. TLD, top level domain distribution, is helpful because that shows you the countries in the areas where that domain has some popularity and some pull. And on the right, it shows top countries for that domain being rated through SEMrush as USA, Singapore, Germany, Russia, and Japan. Okay. Now, the one thing I also like about SEMrush, which is very helpful when you're doing investigations on a particular region, is that you can look at referring domains on SEMrush by country. So what countries out of Russia have suggested social links? Or what companies out of the United States have referred the domain or suggested the domain of social links? You can find some of those from looking at a country filter or a country query through SEMrush of the backlinks, which might be helpful for some types of investigations. Now we're moving to a different example, which is I'm using just a targeted keyword. I use the word OSINT on SEMrush because they have a tool to do keyword aggregation or analysis, and it will provide some related words to a concept or a term. So with OSINT, it gave me a lot of different terms to query. If I was looking up OSINT, that would be synonymous or affiliated to that concept, to pull additional information. And then the other thing that I really like is that it showed, whoops, that was weird. The other thing that I really like is that it will show a listing of the top 10 URLs to that keyword that would be competitive to that keyword. So I didn't list 1 through 6 because SANS was listed as number 8. And since I'm giving a SANS talk, I thought that it would be nice to show that SANS was listed as number 8 under SEMrush as a relevancy, the 8th relevancy result for the term OSINT through their tool. SEMrush also has a Chrome extension, and this Chrome extension is very helpful. It shows you Alexa rankings and Google rankings and some of the other rankings just when you're going over a page. The thing obviously to keep in mind is since it's an extension, it can suck up some of your data. And so you have to look at what kind of risk mitigation measures you would like to put in place for that data section. And I had used the extension and I looked at SANS. And as I said, it pulled Alexa, Google Index, Bing Index, SEMrush's index, and some other options of data about the domain that I was looking at. Okay, now I'm switching to another tool, which is SEO Review Tools. And the SEO Review Tools is free. I didn't notice any premium options, and the site asks for donations. But this one I also found to be very helpful. The first thing I found helpful with the example of looking at not t.me, which is the actual channels on Telegram, but just the general domain telegram.org, was it provides an age for the domain. So you look at it and it just, blunt up front. It gives you the relative age of the domain and the age of the URL, which can be helpful knowledge to have. And I also liked about this tool is that it gives you an internal review of internal URLs, but it also provides a section on fresh backlinks. And that means the most recent backlinks to that domain. So if you're actually tracking a domain and want to know which backlinks are like the most current, this is a very helpful tool to see or to utilize. And on the flip side of that, if you're looking at a page that's a 404, or you're looking at a page that is no longer there, or that's non-existent, this tool will provide recent broken backlinks. And it will also show broken domain traffic. Okay, so that's another one to use. Whoops. Oh, shoot. Okay. All right. And then I wanted to use a different section of this tool, and that part was looking at competitors, and that it can help you lead for paid competitors for advertising. On a domain, that can help lead to affiliated competitors and non-affiliated competitors. And in this instance, I looked up paid competitors for Fox News. So a competitor to Fox News is Fox News, but then it also gave some other entities that are paid competitors on ads for that site that, I might want to look at if I was looking at business intelligence. So if I can't use the fact that Newsmax. Okay, so the last one that I'm looking at is a WooRank extension. The WooRank extension is a Chrome extension, and it also works for a few other. I think it works with Firefox. I'd have to double check on that one, but I know that it works with Chrome. And in this instance, I tested it on social links, and for an extension, it's actually fairly extensive as far as the data that it will pull. So the first thing is it provides an overview of the domain that you're looking at, including a meta description, which is nice because, again, that's fluff. It gives you a kind of a summary, brief, quick summary up front on what's on that domain. Then you go to the next part, and this is where I really like it, is it gives you what kind of analytics or what kind of analytic ID numbers might be on the code of that domain, like within the HTML code. And that kind of triggers you to, wait a minute, okay, so I need to be looking for the Google Analytics ID, and I can look for Facebook pixels, and I can look for, I can look for different kinds of tracking that might be there. Okay, so the other thing that WooRank extension does is that it shows you when a domain expires, and this can be used for good and bad. It shows you when a domain expires, but it will also show you where there's domains that are available that sound almost exactly the same. Theoretically, that could be used by people that are doing like site phishing, but at the same time, it also highlights where that vulnerability for your domain name might be. So, in summary, ad analytics and SEO tools are very helpful for a wide variety of OSINT investigations. You can use it, again, for looking at anything from fraud to counter influence operations to domain investigations, competitive business intelligence. finding users on a social media platform. You can use it and then pivot it with other tools, methods, and means that you want to employ for your requirement. And then some of the methods, such as pulling a user's accounts off of an SEO tool, that in and of a way is kind of like a dork, because the tool wasn't specifically intended to be used that way, yet it can be used that way, and it's readily available, and it's open. And then some ad analytic tools can show you a man in the middle, such as the banking example that I showed you, where you have ad trackers in between authentication and the final destination. And that's it. And the last slide has my point of contact if anybody wants to reach out to me in the future. Thank you so much.